Thank you for listening today. I'm really excited to have Cheetie Kumar on the phone. Cheetie's in Raleigh, North Carolina. And, Cheetie, you've got your hands full. You've got Garland, which is a restaurant, which is has a neat aspect to it that I saw. You're on the sort of in downtown Raleigh. You've got a walk-up window. But you've got Garland. You've got Neptune's Parlor downstairs from that, which is a bar. And then you have King's Barcade upstairs, which is a music venue, and then you're in a band. You're doing a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Huh? How do you do it all?
I'm constantly sleep deprived. I think that's the main downside to it. I didn't take it all on at once. It's been sort of a layering effect. I've been playing music for a long time, so that's been sort of this ongoing thing that I always did, and supplemented the lack of income of being a musician with restaurant work and bartending. So that's where that all started. And my partners actually had King's at a different location that opened in 1999 down on McDowell Street next to where Pools Diner is now. And that building got raised when the block got developed. So when we wanted to do the next, phase of King's, it was important for us to have more options available. We wanted to have a cocktail bar so people weren't only coming to see whatever band was, booked that night. And then I always wanted a restaurant. Be careful what you wish for is what they say. So it's been a gradual adding on one new aspect at a time. And it's definitely, I think I've reached my limit here.
Now, so Garland is your restaurant. So, and how long has that been open?
Well, we started off as just a walk-up window, and that was in May of 2013. And so we did the window only for, from May until October. And what that allowed us a chance to do was to have me have a template of a kitchen staff and establish our kitchen systems that way and figure out sort of the ingredients that we were going to use, the flavor profiles that we liked, and develop a little bit of an identity. And also be renovating the dining room because we did a lot of that work ourselves or with friends. So it was, not the traditional, contractor comes in, does everything, gets finished in 6 weeks. Since the building was this space was already a restaurant previously to us being the tenants, we had sort of a good structure, a good basis to renovate onto. So we weren't starting from scratch. So long story short, we closed the window at the end of October and then opened the dining room in December. And that's basically where we've been at. We opened the window back up for lunch for a little while, but having it be weather dependent was really tricky and very stressful. So, and we're not really using the window very much now. We're kind of only going to bust it out for special occasions and festivals and times when it makes sense for us to have that extra aspect to our service.
But that was a neat idea. So, so you knew you were going to do the restaurant, but you were able to put the window in to let people try your food, to establish some brand identity. That's a really creative thing to do. Is that something you had heard of somebody doing before, or how did you come up with that?
I didn't. I like the idea of a window. I saw it, in different cities. Like when we were on tour, we played in Austin at South by Southwest, and there were always a couple of windows, and it ended up being the only thing that we got to eat because we were playing 3 or 4 shows a day during that festival. And it was well, why Raleigh has, kind of a developing pedestrian downtown, and we kind of should have that. And, we don't have the volume really of foot traffic, so it's I think it made sense to me because of King's, and we have people here in the building. They're not just coming to eat, and sometimes they're not just coming to a show. To me, it just felt like a complete evening, But it's also almost like people have food trucks and then they open a brick and mortar restaurant. So this is sort of our brick and mortar truck. It was a little trial, so it definitely had some positive aspects to it, but it was also almost like opening two restaurants back to back, you know. I felt like we were starting over in a lot of ways when we opened the dining room.
Yeah. Well, that's a really creative thing to do. Now, how I mean, have you been in the restaurant business before in the past, or what drew you to wanting to do this?
Probably insanity. I don't know. I've just always loved food, and I've always been, I guess, into it. I've always cooked my whole life, and I've never, owned a restaurant before, and I wasn't really like a professional chef. I did work in kitchens, and I catered on the side on my own and worked with another catering company briefly off and on. And, just sort of like my family's really food-driven. We are the kind of family that talks about what our next meal is going to be as we're eating the meal, Like, okay, breakfast is good. What are we going to have for lunch? And then at lunch we're planning dinner. We're food-obsessed people. And I think it's because we traveled so much as a band and went in so many places and just were inspired by some of the things that other cities have. And granted, the size is not, we're never going to be like New York, but there were just cool ideas and cool flavor profiles that I felt like could be here, especially with the kind of produce that we have. I just really loved, and I still just love the whole agriculture of North Carolina. I love how much bounty we have, at the risk of sounding a little bit corny, but every season has such distinct harvests, and there's so many ingredients that are available that are really comparable and compatible with Asian profiles. I think it's maybe the climate is pretty much the same, and there's, just being in the South, obviously, I think everybody knows at this point, like Southern cuisine has a distinct culture, which is maybe a little bit unique to America. It has probably the oldest traditions, and it is the most sort of has evolved over time. There's multiple influences. It's its own fusion in a way. There's African, there's Caribbean, there's European, obviously. So all of those things have mashed into this really cool heritage, and so I feel like Southern food has this heritage which rings a note with me because I'm from India and grew up cooking with a certain heritage, and when we moved to America we kind of evolved how we did that, how we did our food in our family. Some ingredients weren't available, and then a lot of ingredients that we couldn't really get our hands on when we were in India are just at every corner market. It's just, I don't know. I'm rambling a little bit here, but
no, this is really fascinating because you have a passion for and lots of experience with the food end of this, which is such a key piece. Now, then there's a lot. So, but then talk about kind of what you learned. There's food, and there's cooking the food, and then there's owning and running a restaurant, managing staff,
exactly.
Handling the business side of it. What have you learned in this process that's been sort of eye-opening for you, and maybe things that you hadn't thought of before you got into it that have been good learning experiences for you along the way?
Yeah, it's completely different to be an excellent home cook and make creative dinners and have good dinner parties even. But when you open a restaurant, the regimented way that you have to approach everything, it took me a while, and I struggle with how to balance a creative process with implementing this in a realistic way that's going to be financially feasible. It's going to be executable, if that's a word, by everybody on the staff, So you're not constantly sabotaging your own life, well, I'm the only person in the building that can do this,
Right.
It has to be relatable to people. You have to be able to like reproduce it the same way every single day. And then there's like very realistic issues of how many ingredients does this have, and do I have the space for it? Can I keep it fresh? Can I get it? Is it available? Like, am I going to run into something that I need to wait 2 weeks to get? Is it going to be gone as soon as it catches on? All of those like little logistical things just become a part of the creative process now. Like initially, it was it felt wrong to think about those things because it felt like a compromise. But now it's just modifying how you think about stuff and knowing like where to place things and who on your staff you can trust with which component of whatever idea it is you have, whether it's cocktail or wine selection or coming up with a dish, and then within that dish, what are the trickiest pitfalls, and anticipating. I think the biggest thing is anticipating problems and anticipating mistakes and being one step ahead of it and like almost having the psychic ability to like go, this is going to mess up today and this person is going to do this and it's not going to, just like go ahead and communicate your, sort of the red flags of every recipe, every situation, communication, and talk to your staff constantly. You just can never stop, It's such a exercise in diligence,
an exercise in diligence for sure.
Yeah, you just have to stay on top of everything, and that's knowing. I don't know. It kind of makes your day different. It makes your brain operate a little bit differently. It's not just about like making food. It's so much more than that. But at the end of the day, it is about the food, so that can never be the thing that, gets compromised. You just have to be think about it in a much bigger picture sense.
Yeah, it's like, making food that doesn't sacrifice quality so that it tastes great, but then also generates a profit because the business needs to be successful to stay in business. It's a balance, isn't it? It's a really tricky balance.
Absolute
like
balance. Yep. That is absolutely the word, and that's I think the biggest sort of challenge is, balancing all of the components of the business, balancing the business with your personal life and having a personal life, balancing working really hard with resting and not feeling guilty about that, and balancing giving people responsibility without, letting go too much. All of those things, I think you kind of have to be a Zen master to do this well, and I'm not anywhere near that. So it's been...
That's really funny.
Yeah, it's been a challenge.
I read something recently. It was an article, and this guy, he was talking about, he was actually primarily talking about software businesses, which is, what I'm in, but he said that, but really for a lot of entrepreneurs, he said you have to do things early on that are unscalable, or, that you can't, like early on, the first year, 2 years, or whatever, you just almost have to be willing to, I think it's hard probably to find that balance, especially in your business, the restaurant business, where you have to pour so much of yourself into it for a while until you can find that right formula for the food, for the service, for the the right communication with your team, the trusting in team members to do things.
Finding
I
that
would think
team.
that it just takes a while, but it's almost like there's just no way around it, is there, for the first couple of years? Like,
I really don't think so. Unless you have a different kind of situation where you have unlimited financial resources, you have a team, and it's really well organized. It almost has to be a lot more corporate, where the template of what you're doing is already kind of there, and you're just filling it in. But so much of having an independent restaurant is pouring yourself into it. That's the whole point. You want to present a certain personality. You want the place to have a particular character, and a lot of that is just an extension of how you think. And I think for a lot of us, this is the only way we kind of know how to do it, so we just do it this way. And there's no substitute for just being here. You just have to put in the time, you have to put in the hours, the labor, the stress, the anxiety, the depth of detail, the anticipation, like all of it. Yeah, if there is another way around it, please let me know. But I can't imagine not doing it this way.
Yeah, and then you've got, and then you're balancing that too with like, Neptunes and Kings, and then you're in this awesome band. By the way, folks, if you're listening, Birds of Avalon, check them out. They're fantastic. So do you wow? You're really. So have you had to take less time at that? To get Garland going, or yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
When we moved into this building in 2010, opened Neptunes within 2 months of signing the lease, and then opened Kings within almost 2.5 months later. So it was like bam, 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 really like a lot of stuff to happen in 1 year. And though the businesses are symbiotic, they're still kind of separate. When there's music venue and all of the details that go into, the sound system and booking and, how ahead of that you have to stay. And, there are 4 partners for this. So that, that part of it wasn't something that I took on by myself. But just building a bar program for 2 places. And I took my time. There was 2 years of getting those 2 businesses on their feet and getting it to where they were somewhat self-reliant. And, you get systems in place. You have a team that you can, hold. Some people's responsibilities are these and this and this, and you can sort of, why am I not thinking the word? Just pass some of those daily tasks on to people. Delegate, that's the word.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And then when Garland opened, when we started, I was really focused on Garland starting in 2013. That was it. We didn't really play shows. I didn't even touch a guitar for 6 months last year. There's just no way. You just can't. And now maybe slowly it's starting to feel like all of these things are a part of my life now in a more equal way, but really Garland has been the absolute glutton of my time. It just sucks everything out. So
talk a little bit about Garland. So talk a little bit about, what's your I say concept. What you're doing with Garland. Why is it there, and what are you all about?
Well, we aren't a single focused ethnic cuisine, but I guess we're sort of spice driven. The backbone of the menu and the food is Indian, but it's much more than that. And it just branches out. It just kind of ends up being food that I like, and food that I feel like people with that palate will like. So there's definitely a lot of Korean influences. There's like I said, Indian food. There's some northern Chinese food influence. A little bit of Middle Eastern, and again, I think I said earlier, the climates in all those places are pretty similar to each other, and also to the south. And then the way the spices and the flavors and the techniques migrated from one place to another are really fascinating to me, and they make a lot of sense, and they work well with what we have available here, meat and fish and produce-wise. So it's sort of it's immigrant food, I guess, and in that way it's a fusion, because that's what people do when they move from one country to another. They take what they bring with them, and then they use what they have in front of them, and you make up something new, So hopefully it all makes sense together, but it's seasonal cuisine because, it's the only way to eat. It's the only way that makes sense. So we might not change our menu per se, but we'll change components in those dishes as often as, nature allows. And so a very long-winded answer there.
No, it is. And I wonder because, you're, you get great reviews, there's great word of mouth in Raleigh about Garland, other restaurant folks that I talk to that I know in Raleigh talk about you all. So I know the food is clearly really good. What else are y'all doing well? because you don't get like all that just from like good food. You have to have, you know, you have to have good
well, we
service.
have an excellent staff back and front. They really know the menu really well. They're able to talk about it and convey it in a way that's easy to understand. We have an adventurous, small but I say tight wine list. And we work on it constantly. We rotate that, and we make sure that the wines make sense with the temperature outside. Our cocktails are inventive and really fun and super delicious. And I'm not just being biased here. We curated the spirits that we use very carefully. We do a lot of special orders, so we have things that you can't find at the ABC store in North Carolina. If you're living in North Carolina, you know how limited that is because of the state laws. And the decor is really, it feels really good in here. It's got sort of a modern but comfortable vibe. The lighting is, flattering, I hope. There's a lot of dark tones. There's a lot of playful, bright colors. There are a lot of murals. We have, our back wall is, all little miniature murals of Indian matchboxes, so those are really bright and vivid. It's a cool-looking space, if I do say so myself. So I think a lot of people say when they come here that they sort of forget where they are. It's not, distinctly Southern, but it's also not distinctly anything. It's just kind of playful and fun, but serious and refined at the same time.
Yeah, and really unique, which is neat, and you clearly put a lot of attention. Just listening to you, I can tell you put tons of attention in every aspect of the business, and have not, left anything overlooked. So,
well, I'm sure. I know we have, but thank you. If it seems that way, that's good.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so many aspects, but I can just tell you pay close attention to detail, and I love that you're just hearing you talk about the wine list that changes constantly. I mean, you just pay a lot of attention to the little things that make the whole experience even better for your customers and make them want to return and so forth. Now, do you you've got now, I guess, a good amount of experience just with, and I guess you must have just one landlord if you're in that's all in that building, but I mean, one of the things I hear a lot is you people talk about negotiating leases. Have you learned some things over time about how to negotiate a good lease, a lease that sets the business up for long-term success?
Yes, that was something that we worked really hard on, obviously, before we got in here, and that's the key. You don't want to regret any of the decisions that you make when you're really excited and you have stars in your eyes and you fall in love with the space and you have all of these visions of how it could work. Obviously, that's, a very inspired time, and everybody, wants, when you're in that process, you're like, no matter what, we have to have the space. You just get into that mode, but you kind of don't want to hope for the best. You kind of have to plan for the worst, and that has to be sort of written into your business plan and your lease and, all of your decisions initially when you're raising capital and figuring out what your rent escalations are, when they happen, how much they happen, how long your term is, what your extensions are past your lease term, and whether or not you're going to be asked to do a personal guarantee, and that's a big clause, It's a very unpredictable business, and it's super risky, and that's why banks don't lend people money if they want to go open a restaurant. You kind of really need to think about all of the bad scenarios before you even get into the door, and that's something that, we really learned, and we had a couple of spots that didn't work out, so we sort of had some trial runs, if you will, which was good, and it was really painful for us to not get those spaces. And again, all those visualizations that you have about a space and how cool it would be and all of that go, just get flushed down the toilet when it doesn't work out. But you mend your heart, and then you move on and you find another space. And I think the main thing to realize from that is your emotions are always going to fuel what you do. and they're not necessarily married to a spot. So be really smart about negotiating your lease and make sure you give yourself enough time to make your money back, to have a healthy business, but make sure that you're not like tethered to it if it's not going to work, that it's not going to ruin you financially for a good decade or something, you know. And then also to be sure that hopefully your landlord can either give you a little break on your first year or give you some time to do construction, because there's always delays. And no matter what your contractor tells you, somebody's going to drop the ball. Something's not going to come in time, or you may need more time, you know, to really do it right before you unlock the doors. You can't ever undo that move. So you have to be really ready, and, you know, taking shortcuts in the beginning and saying I'll fix it later, it's never going to happen. So, you know, time is money in that situation. So if you can think about all of the worst-case scenarios and hopefully have at least some of them written into your lease, you'd be ahead of the game.
Yeah, just a great piece of advice you just gave. And how do you? I mean, you clearly are able to articulate that really well and have spent a lot of time learning about that process. Is that something that, do people need to get a good attorney to do that, or did you all learn this on your own, or how do you make sure you're doing a good job with that? Because it is such an important piece, and you can, you know, that kind of thing can make or break a business eventually if the lease isn't done right. So what do you recommend to people that don't have that experience?
Well, we're fortunate in our partnership. Ben Barwick is his other job is to be a commercial property person. I mean, he owns and leases buildings to post offices, and that's what his family does. So he has a lot of experience with commercial leases. You also have to sort of feel out the situation. Our building is owned by 6 people. It's like a collective landlord, and so we were dealing directly with them. We sat in a room with them, you know, the 4 of us, the 6 of them, and we talked about whether or not our concept worked with what they needed to get every month, you know, whether they believed in what we were doing, and, you know, how much of a base did we already have. And we were fortunate to have Kings already have this sort of legacy and a following and a name and a brand. So they kind of wanted us to be in here, and that helped a lot. It made it a lot less of a sort of lawyer versus lawyer situation, which can also get really expensive. And ultimately, I think, you know, when you're talking about leases, it's still like we're people, you know. Their offices around the corner, and we're gonna see them, you know. You kind of have to feel out the situation, and if you have a personal relationship with your landlord, or if you can at least just talk to them and not only go through their broker or the middleman, then you may not need to rely on your legal advice as heavily. And I think that's usually when you have the most success, you know, because ultimately you're going to have to deal with a person. So you might as well start off with that. But you do need a lawyer. You know, you have to make sure that there aren't things hidden in the lease that they may not or may not intend to. You don't know what the origination of their lease is. Like, are they using some boilerplate thing that somebody downloaded, you know? You don't know. You just need to have somebody look at it. And, you know, that's the thing, like, when you're doing business stuff, the origination, the process of all of that, it stays with you for a really long time. These are long decisions that are made, so you do have to be really careful about what you sign your name to.
Well, yeah, and, you know, like, this is sort of like the unsexy side of the business, but it's the side that, in my opinion, like, a lot of times people may overlook this, and that's, you know, they have good food, good concept or whatever, but there's, like, business decisions that need to be made and made wisely. Otherwise, the business itself may not succeed, even though the concept was good or the people running it were smart or whatever. But
yeah, you can have it all, but, like, the profit margin in this business is so small. And a difference between super, like 5% mistake is basically everything that you might get to take home, you know. So what may not seem like a lot of money in one way to sort of waste adds up really quickly.
Yeah, I worked in a kitchen one summer when I was a teenager, and I didn't have any appreciation for, like, any of the big concepts like that. And so I was doing prep work, and I'd always get like shredded cheese, like extra cheese on the counter, and my manager would walk by and he'd pick up like a pinch, like, you know, like some in his hand, and he'd hold it and he'd go, money, money, money. And I remember thinking, oh, he's crazy. Like, come on, dude.
Yeah.
But, you know, that really is true, because those pennies, you know, every hour, every day, every month, every year add up big time in your business.
Exactly. And that could be one of your utility bills right there.
Yes, yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I'm saying, like, you know, anticipating mistakes that somebody who's just an hourly person, they just come in, they just, you know, I'm going to knock out a bunch of cheese grating or whatever. It's like, which grater do you use? Or, you know, are they going to be able to get down to the nub? Is it smart for me to get it, you know, an attachment for my RoboCoupe to do this? Or, like, what's going to pay for itself faster, you know?
Little things, right? See there, attention to the details. And then how do you, that's another interesting piece to me. I always like to find out, Cheetie, is, you know, like when I talk to owners, like so this is your business, right? So you're gonna pay attention to the details. You're gonna care about each decision that's made. You're gonna go over and above and beyond, you know, in every aspect of the business. But then how do you get the person who's coming in there and who's putting in, you know, 5 hours a day in the kitchen or whatever, 3 or 4 hours a day serving? Like, how do you inspire people like that to care as much as possible? Part of it's probably hiring good people, but then even when you hire good people, you know, over time, like, how do you keep them engaged and inspired and motivated to, you know, do the best job for the business? Well,
that's probably the biggest challenge you have as a restaurant owner, especially if you are like me and you're in the kitchen. I mean, I think a big thing is to lead by example. And, you know, I work harder than anybody in the kitchen. I work longer hours than anybody in the kitchen. And if I'm not going to take shortcuts, I expect that they shouldn't either, you know. And so leading by example is a huge way of doing it. But there's some people who don't get it, even if you're doing that. It's a combination of, like, hopefully putting a little fear in them and then explaining the reasons why. And it's not always about the money. It's about the taste and understanding what your dishes are and being able to articulate why you're doing this in this sort of long, complicated way. Why aren't we opening a bag and dumping it out into our container and putting it on a line? You know, we don't, because this is the difference, you know. Being able to switch things out a little bit here and there, introducing them to new ingredients and letting them try the food. I know we just talked about, like, food waste, but I think that, like, being able to feed your staff and having them understand why they're doing things and what they're cooking. Ultimately, it's not just, you know, I always say, like, we're not just crossing off prep lists here. We're making food that people are going to put in their mouth, you know, and it's something you can't lose sight of the end product. And I think that's really important to see, like, yeah, I just grated, like, you know, 12 quarts of vegetables. That really sucked, you know. But then, you know, once the dish is done, it's like this really cool bird's nest, and it's got these other sauces with it, and, like, the textural experience of why the thickness of those vegetables is important. Then you realize why it's important, you know. It's like it makes a difference if it's too thin, if it's too fat. Like, all of those things have to be tied together to the end product. And, you know, it's just food, yeah, but it's also, this is a meal, you know, and that's kind of an important part of the day. I don't know, having a little bit of romance with what you're doing is nice. Sometimes it's hard to see through the fatigue and be inspired, let alone inspire other people. But as much as you can do that, and just having that culture in your kitchen is really important. And again, sometimes you're not inspired at all. Like, my feet hurt so bad, I just want to lie down. But, you know, you just have to push through it, you know.
Yeah, you really have to love the business. So this is what it comes down to. Like, I don't think there's there's certain common threads it seems like I find in all the successful owners like yourself that I talk to. But generally speaking, like, you have to find your own formula that works well for you based on your personality, your style, and so forth. And part of it too, it just seems like in order to you just have to love what you do, right? Like,
I think there has to be. You have to love something about it. I mean, nobody loves everything about it. Nobody loves everything about it, any job. That's called work for a reason. But there has to be some part of it that really, it gets you off, and you have to be able to share that excitement, whether it's the food part of it, whether it's the service part of it, whether it's the presentation or the lighting or the talking to the guests or sharing a story or whatever it is. I mean, that has to be a spark in your eye, and your staff sees that. They see what's important to you, and they hopefully a good staff will take that and run with it, and be that extension that you really need to have, a sense of confidence and for everything to be harmonious and feel like it's not forced. And, anybody can tell when they walk into a restaurant and they get given a spiel that was obviously memorized and it has a bunch of words that are kind of make you cringe a little bit, that's not going to really make you feel comfortable. So if your staff can convey the things that are exciting to you and they really get it, then your guests are going to get it.
Last question is, I don't know what you do, I want to respect your time, but is when do you find yourself really the most inspired, or when do you come alive? What it's either, you can tell me a specific example or just what really gets you kind of get your juices flowing, get you fired up about what you're doing? When a dish comes together and it's delicious, there's no beating that. Or a cocktail even, when everything when you get something in the door, a new product or new ingredient, there's a new season, you look at this thing and you make something and it tastes good, it's the best feeling in the world. Gotcha. Probably one that you never tire of. No, and you may dread that process, and you may hate yourself during that process, and that's the thing, you just, everybody's creative process is different. Mine has a lot of, self-doubt tied into it, but then, you always kind of come out of it. Why is that? I don't know. I mean, I wish I knew, because I'd love to change that, because every time it's, somewhat of a self-defeating kind of feeling, but I think maybe that makes you try a little bit harder. I don't know, maybe I've written in some sort of punishment into the creative process so I'll be motivated. I'm not sure, but yeah, I mean, that's just a part of how it kind of works out. But when it does work out, it's excellent. And sometimes it's the harder ones are even more satisfying, Yeah, the self, it's interesting because, when I hear you say, you have this, some internal self-doubt, it's funny. I may share a little bit of that sometimes. I think, there's self-doubt, there's also maybe high expectations of yourself, and so you in some ways that almost drives you, because, look, you've got this awesome band and this great restaurant and a bar, and you've done you're inspiring. So just always keep that in mind. What you've done is really neat. A lot of people, they'll listen to this, they'll soak up energy and wisdom and passion from you, and it'll help inspire them. And you're doing great stuff, but it's probably always good to keep you're clearly very humble, and so that probably is, that humility can help drive success too, because you always expect a lot of yourself maybe, and so maybe there's some good in that. But also remember that you're clearly somebody that a lot of people would love to learn from and aspire to be like. So I really tip my hat. I don't know about that, but thank you. Sorry, I interrupted. No, absolutely no. It's very true. It's very true. Well, listen, Cheetie, thanks a ton. I can't thank you enough for the time. I know you all are busy, but we really appreciate serving y'all. I appreciate you taking the time to do this, and anything I can ever do for you, let me know. But I'll let you run. Thank you so much, and thank you for thinking of us. And Schedule Fly has made my life a lot easier, so I appreciate
all of the attention to detail that you put into your product. So thanks for that.
That was nice of you to say. I appreciate that. Thank you very
problem.
much. We love having the chance to serve folks like you all, and it gives me the opportunity to do something like this. So it's awesome. I love it. Well, listen, thank you, and I'm sure we'll talk again soon, but appreciate it very much.
Hope to meet you sometime.
You will. I will be there. I'm in Raleigh a decent amount. I live in Charlotte, but I'm in there a decent amount. My dad lives there. I've been to Capitol Club a couple times and we've filmed over there, and I loved what they're doing. And Jake has told me so much great stuff about y'all. So
he's an excellent neighbor. We are so lucky to have each other next to each other. It's like a little family block. It's awesome. But and y'all have a cool. Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I mean, I just think it's cool that, like, and it seems like you two are a good example, but it seems like in general in Raleigh, like a lot of these awesome independent restaurants, and everybody seems to kind of, like, support each other, and it's not competitive. It's more this, like, rising tide lifts all boats kind of mentality, and I think it's really cool. I mean, I think you have a great scene in Raleigh for independent restaurants, and it's something that a lot of cities would love to have.
Yeah, everybody's really supportive of each other, and it's unusual, I think. It's excellent.
Absolutely. Well, hey, Cheetie, thank you so much, and y'all have a good evening, and keep after it. Keep doing great stuff.
Thank you so much, Will. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, take care.
Okay, bye.
Bye.